him to the medical facility. An ambulance was parked outside her home an hour later, and doctors and paramedics appeared to be waiting for her. Little did she know that her small act of kindness would change her life and her son's future in ways she could never have predicted. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Unveiled Narratives. Today, I have another touching story to share with you. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening. When her passenger gave her a tip, Amanda smiled warmly and thanked him. The old passenger answered quietly, his hand quivering a little as he unlocked the door, stepped out, and took a few shaky steps away while Amanda watched him for a while. With a gentle thud, the door closed, and she exhaled a little in relief that another ride was over. She looked at the crumpled note in her palm and swiftly counted them. As she carefully folded the cash and slipped it into her purse with this tip, a satisfied smile appeared on her face. She finally finished her week of saving, but it wasn't just any savings, it was for Liam, her 10-year-old son, whose birthday was tomorrow, and he had been hoping to celebrate at the amusement park. Amanda had assured him that this year, as a single mother, she would make it happen. It had not been easy saving enough for the park tickets, the gift, and a small celebration, but tomorrow she would finally see Liam's face light up with joy, and that would make every effort worthwhile. Amanda worked tirelessly to give her son the childhood he deserved. Every ride she took, every tip she saved, and everything she did was for him. The next day, as Amanda shifted her seat and got ready to pull away, her eyes shifted to the rearview mirror and her heart skipped a beat. The elderly man she had just dropped off was on the ground, his frail hand raised weakly as if signaling for help, and she felt a moment of quiet satisfaction as she tucked the tip into her purse and imagined her son's happiness. Without hesitation, she turned off the engine, opened the door, and rushed to his side. His breathing was shallow, his face was pale, and his body appeared abnormally still. Amanda swiftly took out her phone and called 911. The operator told her that it would take 10 to 15 minutes for an ambulance to arrive. Seeing the man's weak body, she knew he didn't have much time left. Fortunately, the hospital was only a few minutes away, so realizing she didn't have any more time, Amanda decided to take matters into her own hands. She steadied herself and carefully helped the man sit down, though he was weak, leaning on her for support as she led him back to the taxi. Once he was comfortable in the back seat, a man with her hands firmly holding the wheel, Amanda hurried to the hospital, praying she wouldn't arrive too late. When Amanda pulled up to the hospital's emergency room, she rushed to help the elderly man get out of the car. He leaned heavily on her as they went inside, and nurses came forward right away to help her get him into a wheelchair. A doctor joined them shortly after, evaluating the man's condition. One of the nurses said, "I found him fainting on the street," and Amanda explained breathlessly that he had been walking normally before collapsing. The nurses nodded. Amanda froze for a second as they vanished while wheeling the man towards the treatment area. She breathed shakily inside the swinging double doors, her pulse still racing from the haste to get him to the now quiet reception area in time. Amanda finally gave herself permission to sit down, leaning back in the rigid plastic chair as fatigue set in. The night's events had happened so quickly that she had little time to take it all in. After a few minutes, a nurse came over to her with a clipboard in hand. "Hello, are you the one who brought the gentleman in?" "Yes," Amanda said, straightening up. "His condition is stable," the nurse added with a comforting grin. "He needs some urgent care, but it's nothing life-threatening, likely fatigue and low blood pressure." She glanced at her notes for a moment. "Fundamental examinations and medical care to aid in his recuperation." After a little pause, she said, "Unfortunately, it appears that he is alone in handling the expenses. Would you be willing to assist? It's not a big sum, but we need to move quickly." Amanda's breath caught in her throat, and her hand automatically went to her purse, where the week's savings were neatly folded. She had promised Liam the amusement park tickets, the gift, and the small celebration, and she could already picture his face lighting up with joy and his laughter as he explored the rides and attractions. She looked down at her purse, her fingers hovering over the clasp, and her mind flashed back to the elderly man's frail body and the way he had raised his trembling hand for assistance. Amanda closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, nodded and nodded. "Yes, I'll help." The nurse smiled. "Thank you, I'll make sure everything is handled quickly." As the nurse left, Amanda leaned back in her chair and stared blankly at the floor, a knot of guilt and sadness twisting in her stomach as she considered how she would tell Liam tomorrow that the Amos Park was no longer an option. Amanda handed over the money with a heavy heart, but she persevered, reminding herself that this was the right thing to do and that someone's health and safety mattered more than a single day of celebration. She took out her phone and looked through old photos of Liam, explaining that all the money she had worked so hard to save was gone. One picture, taken on his birthday last year, showed him holding a cupcake with a single lit candle, his smile brighter than any party decorations could ever be. Amanda's lips curled into a faint smile. Perhaps she couldn't give him the special day she had planned, but she could still make it unique in her own way. After a while, the doctor came out of the treatment area and started to walk towards Amanda. He stated the man was stable and that his blood pressure had dropped because of exhaustion and dehydration, but that he was responding well to therapy and would be released after getting a little more rest. "That's fantastic to hear," Amanda said quietly as a rush of comfort passed over her. The doctor stopped to look into her eyes and inquired about the person who had brought him in. "He said he wanted me to thank them on his behalf because it seemed like you had gone above and beyond to assist him." With a modest smile and a shake of her head, Amanda said, "It was the least I could do." She began to head for the exit, her body heaving with fatigue. Her shift was over, and it was well past midnight. All she wanted to do now was go home, where Liam would be waiting for her even if he had probably just before. She reached the departure door. The thought of her son, who had already fallen asleep, gave her otherwise exhausted mind a tiny glimmer of hope. Amanda was stopped in her tracks by a sudden thought, so she turned around and reached into her purse to retrieve one of her taxi business cards. She then approached the nurse at the reception desk and smiled gently, saying, "If he or anyone in his family needs anything, please let me know." After leaving the hospital, Amanda said, "I don't live far, and I'd be happy to help in any way I can." The nurse accepted the card, and her face softened with gratitude. "That's very kind of you. I'll make sure they get this." The quiet streets provided a brief moment to reflect, but her mind was heavy with the events of the night. Like many working parents, she frequently relied on Lisa to watch Liam during her late-night shifts, knowing that he would be safe and cared for. As she turned into the driveway and parked, she took a deep breath to shake off her exhaustion before leaving. Liam ran to her as soon as she arrived, his face glowing with excitement. Despite her worried thoughts, Amanda couldn't help but smile as she gave him a hug and saw how excited he was for tomorrow. His upbeat energy filled the car as they drove home, and he talked to non-stop about the amusement park, the rides, the games, and how much fun it would be. As they got closer to home, Amanda's mind raced as she practiced what she would say to Liam, trying to find the right words to explain everything without breaking his heart. She didn't want to dampen his happiness, but she knew she had to tell him the truth, because the money she had worked so hard to save had gone to help the elderly man at the hospital. She couldn't take him to the amusement park as promised, at least not tomorrow. When she saw flashing red and blue lights ahead of their house, Amanda's stomach dropped. She saw an ambulance parked in front of her door, its lights creating harsh patterns across the dark street. She slowed the car, her pulse quickening, knowing that something was amiss. The joy on his face faded, but she knew there was no way around it. As they emerged, Liam held her hand securely. His previous exhilaration had given way to quiet bewilderment as they got closer to Amanda, who noticed paramedics and doctors waiting by the ambulance as though they had been expecting her. Beside the stretcher, a well-dressed man moved forward to greet her. "Miss Amanda, I am James, this gentleman's son, and my father requested that we come here tonight to personally thank you. He told me about your generosity earlier today and how you didn't hesitate to help him in his time of need." The man spoke in a polite but serious tone. As he thanked her with his eyes, Amanda looked at the elderly guy who offered her a feeble smile. The doctors and paramedics were still close by, prepared to help if necessary, and their presence was a precaution to guarantee his safety as they returned him to the hospital. My father wanted to express his gratitude in a meaningful way, so James reached into his coat and held out an envelope. Amanda hesitated, her hands shaking as she opened the envelope, and inside was a check for so much money that it took her breath away. She stared at it, struggling to comprehend what she was holding, and said, "I can't take this. I didn't help him," expecting anything in return. While attempting to return the envelope, James carefully returned the envelope to her hands. "You deserve it because you didn't expect anything, and this is for you and your son to make life a little bit simpler." Amanda looked down at the envelope, her fingers grazing its edges as though she was trying to confirm that it was real. A mixture of relief and disbelief descended upon her as the elderly man met her eyes and nodded gently, his expression warm and encouraging as if silently urging her to accept. She nodded, her voice steady but soft. Thank you so much. I don't know what to say." For the first time in a long time, hope replaced the constant worry in Amanda's heart. The check in her hands wasn't just money, it was a chance to give Liam the life he deserved, one that was filled with warmth, joy, and opportunity. James offered a small smile, saying, "You don't have to say anything, just accept it." The elder man returned the smile, his gratitude shining through his tired eyes. The doctors moved to help him back into the ambulance, leaving Amanda with a moment of quiet refill. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel if this story resonated with you. Your support enables us to share more motivational tales like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.